Etsy is facing a strike. They're raising their fees on their sellers. What are they going to do about it? Would a competitor be able to take advantage of this opportunity? Etsy sellers are going on strike. The platform has raised its take rate, which is the fee that it takes from GMV. So, you buy something for $100, that's GMV, not revenue to the platform. The revenue to Etsy is the take rate that it charges from that $100 transaction, which historically had been about 5%. So $100 purchase on Etsy, Etsy gets $5 in revenue. That was actually a few years ago was actually at 3.5%. So a few years ago, Etsy went from 3.5% to 5% take rate. And now just recently, they've announced they're going to go up to 6.5%. This is a great example of what we've talked about with Etsy's rise is really going from one platform to a dominant platform in its space to then platform conglomerate. You're seeing Etsy's evolution where they've now made a couple acquisitions, one in Europe, one in South America, some in a related business model to Etsy, so just kind of geographic expansion. Some going into, for example, the Depop acquisition is really bringing Etsy into the secondhand clothing market, which is a great market for them to get into. Love that. Love that positioning. They're bringing Depop to the US, and then they can use Depop as a foothold in Europe to kind of bring the more traditional Etsy model to Europe. So you see Etsy flexing its muscles and its strength into these new markets, new geographies, new business models. And then you see them saying, well, we're creating so much value. We have so many sellers now. They have over 5 million sellers on the platform. Well, we think we've got more leverage, we being the platform. So when we have more leverage as the platform, how do you make more money? The answer is taking it from your sellers, your producers. And that is the classic thing that regulators and legislators in the US and globally have completely missed about the platform business model, is when the platform business model gains in strength, when the platform kind of rises on its monopolistic ascension to dominance, where does it take that extra pound of flesh to beef up its margin? It's not from the consumer. And they're not actually generally making money from the consumer. It's from the producer. That's where they take their pound of flesh. If you're a Google, Facebook, et cetera, you're taking, many tens of pounds of flesh. Etsy's taking a pound of flesh here. They went from 3 to 5% take rate a few years ago. Now they're going from 5 to 6.5. They did another rule change, actually right before COVID, where they were saying, hey, we want to be able to advertise your products on Google. And if we advertise your products on Google, you, the seller, have to pay us at least 12.5%, right? Because they're saying, hey, well, we're going to spend money advertising you on Google. So if we do that, then we need to make sure we get at least 12.5% on the sale of that product without the seller being able to opt out of that program, right? So there are instances where Etsy is actually taking, even more than 10% take rate in those kinds of models, right? So now Etsy can go to Google and say, hey, if my spread is 7.5%, right, from whatever I pay on advertising, as long as 7.5% of that GMV is less than what Etsy is spending on Google or Facebook ads, they just made positive margin, right? So they're doing things like that. This is an example of Etsy gaining dominance, gaining power, gaining, more strength. And the sellers aren't happy about it. They've got 14,000 sellers are on strike for a week or so here. A lot of these sellers have been around for a long time, and so they can see the gradual climb and extraction of more fees from the sellers. Now, is this justified, right? Or is this just a mechanism for the platform to pad its margins? So Etsy says the new fee structure will enable us to increase our investments, including marketing, customer support, and removing listings that don't meet our policies. So I think this last bullet, the sellers would absolutely agree. They don't like having kind of like bogus Etsy sellers, right? That aren't actually making crafts, homemade goods, but they're just kind of resellers. They're buying stuff that's mass manufactured, might seem like it's a craft homemade good, but it's not, right? So how can you crack down on these kinds of, fake sellers, right? Could be a real product, but it's not in keeping with the Etsy community of what, it's supposed to be about. Sellers and Etsy are in agreement there. Let's crack down on those people. Customer support. The sellers are saying, the Etsy has an infamously slow support system. They have a bunch of AI bots taking down stores, inappropriately saying, hey, you violated a rule. But there's no human you can talk to work through that problem with, right? So, but here's the crazy thing. I was reading up on this. The CEO, Josh Silverman, said, Etsy is working on making an app for sellers to help them more easily manage their businesses. They haven't made an app for their sellers. How is that possible? You have to go into the web portal every time or log into a mobile website every time you wanted to make edits on your Etsy store? Or maybe they would text you, hey, you got an order. There's no app for the sellers? That seems insane to me. You don't need to raise your take rate to make an app for the sellers, guys. I mean, that's ridiculous. You have over 5 million sellers. There's no app? I mean, that seems insane. The marketing thing, I don't think jives with the sellers. What I'm not seeing here is where is the fulfillment and infrastructure support, right? I think that is such a big challenge. How can Etsy get better at payments, shipping, fulfillment, these kinds of things, right? I think that's one of the biggest challenges for if you want to buy a lot of stuff on Etsy, you're paying separate shipping fees for each one of these sellers, and it can vary. The fulfillment times can vary, right? How can you help solve those problems? I feel like if you were to really talk about what you're doing there, in addition to customer support and taking down these, inappropriate sellers, I mean, that kind of seems table stakes, right? And you're really investing in infrastructure and fulfillment and those kinds of value-added services, that would make sense. But the first thing they led with, this is Etsy leading with it, is marketing. That's not what these sellers are complaining about, rightly so. That's making more money for Etsy. Is it really going to move the needle for these, 14,000 sellers? I don't know. So I see where the sellers are coming from. What do? You now have the ascent, a rising platform on the rise, flexing its muscles. What do you do? What can you do? The good news is there is competition in this space. We've talked about, where is eBay? What is eBay doing? eBay, is eBay's platform shrinking? You can go check out those videos. But, this to me, from a media standpoint, this article just came out yesterday. Where is eBay's PR people? Where is eBay saying, hey, Etsy sellers, we're going to give you a golden deal, right? We're going to slash our take rate for, 2 years, 3 years, which is actually a strategy which Alibaba used against eBay in China to beat eBay. They said, hey, we're not going to charge any fees for 3 years. And then Alibaba allowed buyers and sellers to communicate freely because there wasn't any concern about the platform taking a fee, a take rate, right? I wonder if eBay could take a lesson out of its own failures in China and actually go to Etsy and try and recruit their sellers to say, hey, come over to us, right? Why is eBay allowing an Etsy to exist, right? You would think there's just so much similarity in the business model. Yet no, look at Etsy surging these past few years and eBay frankly struggling. If you're interested more on this topic, we've talked a lot about Etsy and its acquisitions and the moves that they're making. We've also talked a lot about eBay recently and some of the challenges that they've been facing. Go check out those videos.